Hello there guys, and as said in the last review, we will be taking a look at the 2005 Carnegie Dilong. So, without further ado, let's get into it. First up, the pose. The pose of this figure is, it's got its tail kind of like flicked out to the side and it's looking to its left with this arm that's kind of dropped down on the ground and its mouth is open. And this gives it kind of like a surprised look to me, like almost as though something came out from the side and went bah! And then that scared it, which is why it is doing that. That's why it looks kind of scared, because something scared it, which I think is very nice. It looks like it's about to like turn it and shoot off in the other direction to run away from whatever it is that scared it, whatever bigger it was, which is pretty good because this was a fairly small creature. It was a tyrannosaur, but it was a very early tyrannosaur and it was not all that large. Now, however, one thing about the pose is that you might have noticed is this is indeed a tripod. It's leaning on that one finger. And because it's leaning on that figure, you can see it does have some paint wear going on that finger. Because as I slide it around and stuff, which is unfortunate. That's one of the downsides of tripods, is that can happen. So it definitely, at the end of the day, it's an okay tripod. It doesn't take from the pose. It doesn't look like the animal, if this was a real creature, it doesn't look like it needed to have its finger on the ground right there. It looks like you could just lift it up and be fine. But unfortunately, that does kind of set it down just a little bit because it does, tripod do lead to paint wear, which is unfortunate. It doesn't set it down all that much because it is a naturalistic tripod and not a tripod that makes it obvious that it couldn't be in any stance other than a tripod. So overall, I give it a 8 out of 10 for the pose. It's very nice, very dynamic. It would have gotten a 9 if it hadn't been a tripod that just knocked it down, but only slightly, not too much. It's still got a very nice pose, and I think it's deserving of its 8. Next up, the paint job. So as you can see, most of the body is covered in this very nice gray color, with its underside being a nice white that has clearly been painted on. I'm pretty sure this gray is the color of the plastic, so the fact that the underbelly is white shows that it has indeed been painted down there. The tips of the forelimbs, the parts that aren't covered in feathers, are painted in black, which I think helps give them a nice standout with the rest of the body. And the thing is they don't just suddenly cut off, they kind of like, the black fades into the gray, which I kind of like a lot. It shows how the feathers aren't just suddenly stopping, they're kind of more like slowly stopping, which I like a lot. At the back, I got kind of a paint nitpick. You can see it there, the black stripe running down the back, kind of like gets smeared right there, which I don't like a lot, and it might just be on mine. It ends in this beautiful red and black and yellow tail fan, which is very colorful. And the underside of this tail fan is yellow, so it's very, very colorful. Moving up along the body, we have the black stripe kind of like spreads out along the shoulder blade into 2 other stripes. And it has 2 parallel red stripes running along the black stripe right along the chest, which is very nice. Now we move on to the head. It's got like this yellow right in there, and then it's got this beautiful, beautiful red head, and with a yellow on top. It's got lots of yellow and red on it. The teeth, at least in this image from what I can see, look kind of yellow on the camera, but I can assure you that they do not look like that in real life. They look white. It's got this black stripe running on top of the head, and like pretty much all Carnegie figures, it has a nice golden eye But one of the weird things about this figure, if you can kind of see here, is that it has a rectangular pupil, which is kind of interesting. Rectangular pupils are normally found on prey animals because those help give them a wider range of vision. There we go, now it's focused. They're not normally found on carnivorous creatures. They normally have either vertical pupils like cats or round pupils like us or dogs. So that's kind of interesting. Might be kind of inaccurate, but I'll get more into that later. The inside of its mouth, I'm not sure how well that's popping up, but it is painted a nice pinkish red color. So overall, I give this figure a 8 out of 10 for paint job. It's got a very nice paint job. I really like how it's got the nice flamboyant feathers along with the much more downy ones that are probably used to keep warm. I think it's a very nice paint job and I like it a lot. Next, detail. Now this figure has some very nice feathering detailing on it. It's very nice. It's not the best detail in the world, but it's also not the worst. When we get down to the feet, we see that they have been painted with these nice bird scales, and they got claws on them, which is very nice. We get onto the hand, which also has some scalage on it, as well as claws. We get to the head. The nostril on this side isn't all that well defined. It's much more well defined on that side right there. And it does have an ear hole. That's right back there. Same on that side. And overall the figure's detail is pretty good, especially for how small it is. Here is its head compared to an American penny. As we can see, its head is about the size of a penny. This is a very small, tiny figure. And so the detail that they could pack onto it, especially for 2005, is very nice. And I like that a lot. However, other than features such as the ears and nose, it doesn't have incredible detailing on the head. It does have tiny teeth, as it should, but the detail is not super duper superb. So overall, I give this thing's detail a 7 out of 10. It's pretty decent. It's not as well as it could be, but it's still a pretty nice score for it. Now, we are on to the last section. Paleontological accuracy. Well, let's start off this section with the biggest thing. This is a figure that is completely covered in feathers, as it should be. Dilong, I don't know how many specimens we have of it. I think we just have one, but that specimen does show feathering. There's only 2 tyrannosaurs that we have found with feathers. Dilong and Tyrannus. They're the only 2. And because we know this guy had feathers, it's important to put feathers on him. Now, they have gone for a full body covering of feathers on him. Which is nice. I like feathers. I know some people don't. If you don't, that's fine. That's your opinion, but I kind of like them. But this might possibly be more feathers than it actually had, since, I'm sorry, but I forgot where the feathering portions were that we know were feathered, that we have the impressions of. But I do know that they did not cover the whole body. I think it was like right here, and then I think it was like there as well. So it does leave some of the body, such as the tail, could have possibly been naked. I think, I'm not sure. But giving a full body covering of feathers isn't inaccurate, and they've given it the right feathers for the most part, these nice downy feathers, because at our current knowledge, tyrannosaurs broke off from the rest of the theropods before bird-like feathers had evolved, and this was as advanced as feathers had gotten. So it's good that they are covering in this. However, they have given it some modern bird feathers. I don't know how well it'll pick up on the camera, but it's pretty obvious in real life that the feathers, especially when viewed from the underside, on the tail are indeed more modern-like. Maybe not necessarily modern bird feathers, but at least a lot more shaped like modern bird feathers. Which, I don't know. There's no current evidence, I don't think, of that Tyrannosaurs had feathers that advanced. But it could have, maybe. I don't know if I'll mark it down for it or not. But other than that, it is pretty good for accuracy, I feel. It's got 3 fingers. The head seems to be shaped pretty good. The limbs seem to be pretty proportioned. It's got tiny teeth. The square pupil that I had, not the square, it's not square, the rectangular pupil that I described earlier, I think I'll knock it down in accuracy for that one as well, since it should be more of a circular pupil. I don't know if this is just mine. It might just be mine, but I mean, you could have one where it is round and mine is just weird. One of the things to note is this figure does not possess a cloaca, but that is acceptable since the feathers would have been covering up the cloaca, so it's not really like you'd be able to see it anyway. So that is completely fine. And also, one thing that I noticed when I was looking at it is the feathering actually continues, as you can see here, down onto the feet, all the way to the bottom of the foot. Not on the front of the foot, it doesn't, but on the back of the foot it does, which is very interesting. It shows that they have very, very thoroughly covered this animal in feathers. And then moving down here onto its feet, the middle toe is slightly longer than the other 3, which is good because the middle toe was slightly bigger because it took some more of the weight. And you can see it better on this foot because that's what foot is a little bit more splayed. And it also has the tiny dew claw, which is also very, very nice. So overall for accuracy, I'm going to give this figure a 8 out of 10. It's got a couple flaws, but other than that, this seems to be a fairly accurate figure. Definitely very nice to see. It's always nice when you get a fairly accurate figure, which is why I think it deserves its 8 out of 10. Now, before we move on to the moment that you've all been waiting for, its overall score, we are now going to figure out how big it is, as well as do some size comparisons. Taking my lovely ruler here, we see that this figure is about 5 inches long. Not super huge. For those of you on the metric system, that is about 13.5 centimeters long. It is about 2.5 or so inches high at the head. And for those of you on the metric system, that is about 6.5 inches at the head. So like I said, this is a pretty small figure. It's not tiny, but it's not big. So first up is our constant, another feathered dino, only except this one with some more advanced feathering, the Safari Limited 2017 Feathered Velociraptor. And this really shows just how tiny this figure is, because the Velociraptor is indeed bigger than this teeny tiny little Dilong, both in length and in height, as well as width. So that really shows you just how small this thing is. And now for another famously small figure, the Collecta 2017 Ionosaurus. And this really shows you just how small this thing is. It is bigger than the Ionosaurus, I will give it that. It's got it in height, kind of same width and length, but it's fairly similar in size. So for those of you who have this figure, this really shows you just how this one scales up. It's not entirely all that large. And then the figure that we reviewed last time, the Safari Limited 2004 Hypochrosaurus, which, once again, a running theme here, is both bigger in this in height and in length. So, overall, I give this figure a 7 3/4, or a 7.75 out of 10. It is a very good figure. It's got a couple flaws, but I definitely recommend picking it up, especially since it is a Carnegie, and Carnegie are going out of production and are getting harder and harder to find. So if you can find it and you want it, get it. But anyway, that is it for me and this review. So the next review should be on the Safari Limited 2007 Stegosaurus. I cannot wait to see you all then. Dino Man, out.